HOA President Linda believed she could intimidate me into giving up my ranch, but she clearly ignored the warning signs right in front of her. She demanded that I tear down my fence, never realizing that my land bordered an active bear sanctuary. The moment she stepped onto my property to harass me, she came face to face with a 1,000-pound grizzly that doesn't care about HOA regulations. If you think Linda finally got the wild wake-up call she deserved, hit that subscribe button and comment justice below. Because the way this legal battle ended is something you won't see coming. Alex has spent years grinding away at a high-pressure job in the city, constantly dreaming of a quieter life where the loudest sound would be wind brushing through the trees. Eventually, he found exactly what he was looking for, a massive, beautiful ranch sitting right on the edge of a sprawling national forest. To Alex, this place wasn't just land on a map. It represented freedom, peace, and a fresh start away from the chaos of city life. What Alex didn't know was that his peaceful retreat was about to collide with the self-appointed ruler of the neighborhood. Linda, as president of the local Homeowners Association, she governed the area with an iron grip and a clipboard packed with ridiculous rules. In her mind, every property, even those on the rugged outskirts of town, should resemble a perfectly trimmed, sterile suburban lawn. Only a week after Alex moved in, Linda pulled up to his gate in her expensive SUV, looking like she had arrived for a confrontation. She didn't bother with greetings or introductions. Instead, she immediately pointed a sharp finger at Alex's solid wooden perimeter fence and sneered. "This rustic disaster doesn't fit our community's modern aesthetic," she snapped. "It violates Code 402, and it needs to be removed immediately." Alex stood calmly in his leather jacket, offering a polite but firm smile. He explained that the ranch was private property and that the fence was essential for keeping his livestock safe while preventing wildlife from wandering in. But logic wasn't something Linda cared about. Control was. "I don't care about your animals," she barked. "If that fence isn't gone within 48 hours, I'll fine you $500 a day until you're forced to sell this dirt patch." Alex quickly realized that Linda had no intention of backing down. Over the next several days, she began appearing near his property line at random hours, claiming she had the authority to inspect his land whenever she wanted. It was clear she planned to pressure him until he gave in. Alex didn't want a screaming argument or a neighborhood feud. What he wanted was a permanent solution. So he contacted his attorney and asked him to review the property deeds in detail. That's when they uncovered something unusual about the back half of his ranch. It turned out that a large portion of Alex's land sat directly on a federally protected wildlife corridor. A slow, confident grin spread across Alex's face as he realized exactly how the situation could play out. Federal law clearly stated that no man-made structures could interfere with the natural movement of grizzly bears and other wildlife in that specific corridor. Armed with that knowledge, Alex made a phone call to a local contractor, but not to build anything new. Instead, he asked him to remove the wooden fence that Linda hated so much. Later that afternoon, when Linda drove past the ranch and saw workers dismantling the fence boards, she rolled down her window and burst into laughter. "I knew you'd fold, Alex," she shouted smugly over the noise of the tools. "Nobody beats the HOA." Alex didn't argue. He didn't even respond. He simply smiled while supervising the next step of his plan. Along the now open boundary, he had workers install several large, impossible-to-miss warning signs. Bright red letters covered each one. "Danger! Live bear activity area. No trespassing." Beneath the warning, a smaller sign referenced the exact federal statutes protecting the wildlife corridor. For Alex, the signs were a serious and clear warning. For Linda, however, they looked like nothing more than a desperate bluff. She convinced herself that Alex was simply trying to scare her away from inspecting the property she was determined to control. Over the following days, Linda's obsession only grew worse. She couldn't stand the fact that Alex seemed completely unbothered now that his ugly fence was gone. At 3 a.m, she started sending him angry emails demanding he repave his driveway so it would match the neighborhood's approved gravel style. Alex ignored every single message. Eventually, Linda decided she needed photographic evidence of Alex's so-called violations so she could present them at the next HOA board meeting. One afternoon, when she saw Alex drive toward town. She grabbed her camera and marched straight toward the area where the warning sign stood. She was about to discover that while Alex respected the law, the local wildlife had a much more direct way of handling trespassers. Linda stopped at the edge of the property, glaring at the bright red bear warning sign with open contempt. Pathetic, she muttered to herself. She was convinced Alex was using the wildlife as a cheap scare tactic to keep the HOA away from his precious ranch. Adjusting her expensive pink suit, she gripped her camera tightly and stepped over the invisible property line where the fence once stood. She was determined to find something. Anything. A pile of scrap wood, an unfinished shed, overgrown grass. Any small detail she could photograph and use to bury Alex under HOA fines. Linda walked deeper into the wooded section of the ranch, completely ignoring the strange silence settling over the forest. Even the birds had stopped chirping. She was so focused on checking her camera screen that she failed to notice the enormous shadow moving slowly behind the old wooden barn nearby. Then it happened. A deep, guttural growl rolled through the air. The sound was so powerful that it felt like the ground itself was vibrating beneath her feet. Linda froze instantly. Her heart slammed against her chest as she slowly turned toward the noise. Stepping out from the shadows beside the barn was a massive grizzly bear weighing close to 1,000 pounds. Its thick fur looked matted and wild, and its eyes locked directly onto her. This wasn't a bluff. It wasn't a trick. It was a real apex predator. The same one Alex had been trying to warn her about. The bear slowly rose onto its hind legs, towering above her, and unleashed a thunderous roar that echoed across the valley. In that moment, every ounce of arrogance vanished from Linda's face, replaced by pure terror. Her camera slipped from her hands and crashed into the dirt. She screamed at the top of her lungs and spun around to run, but her high heels and tight suit made it almost impossible to move quickly. She stumbled across the uneven ground as the bear dropped back to all fours and began pursuing her with heavy, thudding steps. What Linda didn't realize was that Alex had never actually gone to town. He was sitting quietly inside his truck about 100 yards away, watching everything unfold through his high-definition security system. He was waiting for exactly the right moment. As Linda staggered toward the property line, gasping for breath and covered in dirt, Alex finally stepped out from his porch with his phone raised. He gave a sharp whistle. The bear immediately turned its head. Interestingly, the animal, one Alex had nicknamed Buster after seeing it around the property several times, lost interest in the panicked woman and wandered back toward the trees, more focused on a patch of fallen berries than on continuing the chase. Linda collapsed near Alex's boots, sobbing and struggling to breathe. You tried to kill me," she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at him. Alex calmly adjusted his leather jacket and held up both his phone and a printed legal document. "Actually, Linda," he said with a steady smile, "I warned you 3 separate times." He explained that the signs were clearly posted and that he now had crystal clear 4K footage of her trespassing onto a federally protected wildlife corridor while harassing a property owner. Because she had ignored the warnings and violated federal protection laws, she was now facing significant fines, and every moment had been recorded. The consequences came quickly. Alex didn't stop with a simple warning. He sent the footage directly to the HOA's legal department and also shared it with the local news. Within 48 hours, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. Terrified of federal investigation and a potential lawsuit, they immediately removed Linda from her position as president. They also canceled every fine they had issued to Alex and released a formal public apology. Linda, on the other hand, was forced to pay thousands of dollars in trespassing penalties. Eventually, she even put her own house up for sale, unable to face the neighbors she had spent years bullying. At last, Alex got the piece he had moved to the ranch for. He never rebuilt the fence. As it turned out, Buster and the other bears did a far better job of keeping unwanted visitors away than any wooden barrier ever could. Standing on his porch and looking out across the mountains, Alex knew that on this ranch freedom and justice had finally won. Linda learned her lesson the hard way. But what about you? Do you have a crazy HOA story of your own? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed Alex's ultimate revenge, Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more wild stories. Trust me, you won't believe what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.